Hey guys, welcome back to my channel Kalman Code. Today we are going to solve a problem in JavaScript together, and it's a practice for loop as well as arrays, so that after this tutorial you will understand loops or for loops much better. So let's get started. The problem says write a JavaScript program to find the most frequent item of an array. So as you can see, we have here an array that contains some numbers, random numbers, 3, 2, 2, and then 3, 2, blah, blah, blah. And we need to find out which number has been repeated in this array the most. So let's do it by just by ourselves right now. 3 has been repeated 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, and the 2 has been repeated 1, 2, 3, 4 times. So 3 should be the number that is going to that we need to get out of this array at the end of creating this code, because it has been repeated 5 times, which is the most, because other numbers have not been repeated as many. So in order to find out the number that the most frequent item or most frequent number in this array, we should compare each number with all of the other numbers in the array. So for example, we will create a loop and then start with the first number in the array, which is 3, and we start comparing it with other items, with other numbers, till the end of the array. So we will first take the 3 and compare it with 2, and then make an if statement, and if they are equal, we should increase the frequency, the number of repetition for that number. So 3 doesn't equal 2, so we will not do anything, and then we move on to the next element, the third element of this array, 2. We compare it with the first element, which is 3, and they are not equal, so then we move on to the fourth element. The fourth element equals the first one, so we should increase the number of repetition for the number 3 to 1. So now we have 2 times, 3 has been repeated now 2 times, and we move on to the fifth element. It does not equal the first one, so we do nothing, and then we move on to the sixth element, which is 3, and it equals the 3, so we now increase the number of repetition for the 3 once again, and we do the same for each element in this array. So let's get started and start coding. The first thing that we need is a counter that is going to store the number of repetition for each element, and we are gonna initialize it with 0, and we also are going to have an old counter, because we need to compare each time. We need to compare the old number of repetition. So for example, the 3 will be at the end of the first loop will be repeated 5 times. So we will store that in this old counter, and we then compare it with the number of repetition for the number 2, and the number 2 will be at the end of the loop will be repeated 4 times. And after we compare 4 with 5, obviously 5 is larger or bigger, so that we should store the old counter. We should store the number we should store 5 in the old counter, because it's greater than 4. So here this one should be old counter equals to 1. Hopefully you guys understand this so far, but I promise you will understand it much better at the end. The first for loop is going to be var I equals 0, and then I, as long as the I is smaller than the array length, length, and then we increase the I plus plus, so that we loop through the array. And then we need to create another loop so that we take the first element, and then we make the other loop for moving on, comparing the first one with every element in this array. So the second for loop is going to be var j equals to I, and then j, as long as j is smaller than array length, and then j plus plus. And here the most important part comes in. You need now to check if the first element, or each element, in this case the first loop, the first element, we are going to compare it with itself first, so that we increase the counter from 0 to 1. So here I'm going to say if the array of I equals to array j. And what that means is that if we start the first loop, the I will be obviously 0, and array 0 equals to 3, right? So this one should be, now here this one should be 3 equals array j, which is equal to 0 as well, because I is 0. So 3 equals 3, that is true. So we need now to increase the counter. So the counter should be here, the counter should be 1, meaning that we have now 3 1 times only in this array. And as we move on, we increase this. And to increase the counter, this should be plus plus, not 1. Plus plus, increasing this from 0 to 1. And then we need to, after we move through the complete array and we finish the loop, we should here create another if statement, which is going to compare the old counter with the counter, right? And if the old counter, which at the first loop is going to be equal to 1, if it's smaller than the counter, which is going to be at the end of this loop, equal to 5, right? Because the 3 has been repeated 5 times, and if that is true, which is true, we are going to change the old counter, and we store the counter inside the old counter, meaning that the old counter will be 5 at the end of the first loop. And we move on and do the same. And after we finish this loop, we should again make the counter equals 0 again, so that we can do the same for the next element. So for the next repetition, we are going to here compare the array of I, which is equal to 1, array of 1 equals to 2. So at this repetition, at the second repetition, this one is equal to 2. And array of j, it's going to be equal to first 3. And if that is true, which is not true, so we are not going to go through this if statement at all, right? But here, when we test this if statement, it's going to test the old counter, which is at this time equal to 5, and is it smaller than if we finish the complete loop, if it is it smaller than 4. Is that true? It's not true, meaning that we are not going to implement this line of code, and we move on and move on to the third element, which is 2, and we do the same again and again until we determine which number has been repeated the most. And obviously we need a way of printing out which number has been repeated the most, and to do so I should use the console.log. So inside at the end of the program, I am going to use console.log, and then I'm gonna pass the old counter, and obviously the old counter should be equal to 5. So let's now save and test. And as you can see, the console says 3 has been repeated 5 times. So this problem is very, very important because it will help you understand algorithms much better, because as you can see, you would have, after the end of this tutorial, you should have implemented 2 for loops, and you should, by the way, you should understand this very well, because you will encounter these kinds of problems in interviews or in your job, even in your job if you are a developer in any field of programming. So that's it for this tutorial. If you like this tutorial, share, like, and subscribe for more content. And don't forget to leave comments below if you have any questions. And by the way, I have a free ebook on how to make money coding. You can download it right now in the description below. That's it for this tutorial. Thanks for watching. I'll see you later.